Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a little grand tour of Theris Island, the new map that dropped this season on the Cycle Frontier. Essentially, the easiest way to do this will be to break this map up into 3 different zones: the outer, the middle, and the inner. Within these 3 zones, there are multiple POIs and various tiers of loot and enemies to look out for, and we'll be going over which type is in each of these zones. The first of those zones is going to be the outer zone. The outer zone is going to be fairly popular because this is where you're going to be dropping in and evacing from. You'll have your important POIs like the Korolev Docks, Osiris Research Center, Osiris Offices, the Osiris Labs, Sparkling Pool, and the Korolev Island HQ. A lot of these POIs are important just for some Theris questing. They're not going to be super important later on because most people are just trying to get to the center of the map. The loot that you're going to find in this outer ring is going to be your more basic loot. You're going to need it for quarters upgrades and maybe a few quests here and there, but really it's not going to be that high tier rare loot that you're really looking for. Next up, we have the middle zone. This is going to consist of POIs that are the Cave of Stars, Storm Pillar, Korolev Core Outpost, and Korolev Quarry. Now, the Korolev Quarry and the Core Outpost are still going to have your basic Korolev stuff, but the tier loot gets a little bit higher. Korolev Quarry and Core Outpost, you're going to be able to find more smart mesh, which is a fairly important thing at this point when you're trying to craft higher level gear. And then Cave of Stars is going to be your medical supplies again. Think of like Pinnacle Labs, but a little bit higher tier loot than that. You have a better chance of finding things. Speaking of, Cave of Stars has a couple just regular Marauders and then a bunch of Striders there, and then a few Rattlers. Now, between the area of Cave of Stars and the Korolev Quarry and the central part of the map, which is the Korolev Core Outpost and Storm Pillar, you're going to have to jump from one side to the other because there are huge chasms in between these 2 land masses. And if you fall into them, you do not get your insurance back. So you have to be careful of that. And it's also important to note that there are Marauders kind of patrolling these areas. They're very easy to avoid, but it's worth knowing that they're there. Now, once you jump across these chasms and you're in the Storm Pillar Atrium area, it gets a lot more difficult. One, it's a much more close and confined area. You're going to be in these cave systems, which are going to put you closer to enemies, not only creatures, but also other players. And it's a very confusing cave system at first until you really kind of find your footing from trial and error, dying a few times probably, but it's a very cool area. Tougher monsters for sure. You're going to have savage Marauders roaming around. You're going to have a bunch of Striders and mature Rattlers roaming around, a few heavy Striders as well, but the tier loot is going to be a little bit higher as well. Finally, you've made it to Storm Pillar. This is going to be very obvious because it's a cool alien architecture looking area. It's going to have 2 tiers to it, a top and a bottom. This area is mostly just a middle ground to get even lower into the map. Finally, let's talk about the inner zone. Now, the inner zone isn't really on the map because it's under Storm Pillar. So you have to go through Storm Pillar, and you'll be in this area called the Descent once you get underneath Storm Pillar. Now you'll go even deeper, and you'll be in this area that is just an underground cave. You're going to see a waterfall. There's going to be some savage Marauders and other high-tier creatures that you're really going to want to avoid. And you're going to want to go a little bit deeper. And once you do that, you'll eventually find the Forge. Now, the inner zone doesn't really have a whole lot of high tier loot, but there are areas that you're going to need to mine this different type of ore and mine these other crystals that you're going to use in crafting with the Forge. Now, I'm going to have another video on the Forge, so be looking out for that, but it's important to note that you're going to want these items to craft these legendary and exotic things with this Forge. It's a really cool system that they added to the game and is the main part of the inner zone. The inner zone is definitely the most scary because you're going to be running into all these high tier creatures and a lot of very geared players, so you really need to keep your head on a swivel and pay attention to your surroundings. Now, like I said, I'm going to be making a video on the forge, so be looking out for that. And if there's anything you would like for me to go into deeper detail with, please leave a comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and please hit that subscribe button.